I had to be destroyed to rebuild. One day you're going to tell the story and you're not going to break down. You will tell it because it's your fight song and it's going to help others. There's a lot of self-abandonment in that lifestyle if you're going to put others before yourself. So you got to get rid of people pleasing. And a lot too of us are acting out of ego, which ego makes you a bad leader.
Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Leadership and Love. I'm very excited today because we've got somebody who's just a fascinating individual, and I'm going to read her bio to get us off to a great start. So Ginger is an author, poet, and advocate whose compelling narratives explore resilience, healing, and transformation. Born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, Ginger is a second-generation Nashville native and fourth-generation Tennessean whose Southern roots deeply influence her storytelling. Her memoirs and poetry delve fearlessly into personal experiences, from navigating complex relationships and emotional upheaval to finding empowerment in vulnerability. Ginger's writing often illuminates the journey from toxicity and trauma to self-discovery and thriving. Through her authenticity and raw honesty, she invites readers to confront their own struggles and reclaim their stories. When not writing, Ginger resides on a houseboat on Old Hickory Lake, where she continues to find inspiration in nature, personal reflection, and the tranquility of the water. So first off, Ginger, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Ginger, I'd like to talk about it in your book writing and your coaching. I think there's great power in telling our story. I'd like you to share with our listeners how you've been able to make transformations, healing, because you've gotten the stories out of you.
Sure. Well, okay. So to start, and I'll tell a little bit now about myself. I was born and raised in Nashville, as we talked about. Child of divorce, survived two, I would say, toxic, emotionally stunted parents, had some abuse going on in the home. And so sort of set me up for my future relationships, and not in a good way. I got married like everybody, started a family, married a man in the military. And that life for me, I was doing what everybody does. Normal, what normal people, you seek out a partner, you get married, you have a family, and I was a traditional wife, even though I worked and was a single parent. So, I looked forward to that. I looked forward to having more children, building that family, and that's what we did. And I mean, wow, when our lives were turned upside down, the war came along, 9/11 happened, and we were prime in a military his career was at a point where um he had been waiting for this war. This was going to be their war. They'd been training 12 years. He was ready to go. And we were what I thought to be true patriots of our country, um and fighting for something good, for freedom, whatever that meant. He was a Green Beret, so that put a little different spin on, I think, what our experience might be from someone who may be, let's say, like you, like a Marine. Different in some ways and very similar in a lot of ways as well. But that unit in particular, they did a lot of deployments really quick. So our lives evolved very quickly after 9/11. He did several combat tours very quickly back to back. We started burying friends. But things started to take a change in about, let's say, 2003, and he went to Iraq, and he definitely started to show some concerning things to me that were concerning about maybe what he was doing over there, and what was happening while they were overseas in combat. And so he started bringing that home. um but I was still very committed at that time, so we won't drag that out too much. In 2011, he was wounded for a second time. He's got two Purple Hearts and is very much a what you would consider an American war hero, definitely. um we got some Bronze Stars in there and some other things, but uh there was also illegal activity going on within that his team, within the unit, within, from what I'd seen from where we started to who he had sort of become, which in the way I saw it was not the same man. So as he got wounded this last time we ended up at Walter Reed, we were already, I had separated from him. There had been some infidelities on his part. Um, and I had found out about these things. It had gone back into our marriage quite some ways. And I do talk about this in my book quite extensively, but you get the idea. And so I started to wake up to what my life really was. And I couldn't keep living in a lie and keeping an image for people that that we were this great couple and this patriotic family, and we had our shit together, and we lived in a great house and drove great cars and had all the toys and had this great life, and it just was not that, and it just blew up. So as that happened, I had to transform very quickly, and I didn't even know who I was when it came down to it, but so going through all of that pushed me, maybe even before I was ready. Um, and, I had to be destroyed to rebuild. And so that's what happened.
So I'd like you to talk about, for our listeners, how has telling your story, writing your story,
Sure.
sharing your story with others, how has that helped heal you?
Oh, man. I realized through some of the therapy at some point, I think I had, it took me a good while to find a good therapist. I just want to say that to give people hope. Sometimes you're not going to get it on the first try. You have to kind of click with somebody, and I finally was able to do that well after my divorce. This is, it took me years. I'm slower at these things. I have to learn the hard lesson a couple times before it takes, or at least I used to. But as I started to learn to heal myself from my childhood and so forth and so on, and love myself at the same time, I want to express that it takes a lot of self-awareness and self-love, and taking accountability for your own behavior to sort of, get to a point in your life where you can it change things, and you can actually see this change in your life happening, and how wonderful that growth can be, even though it's terrifying and it's painful. But as each time you get to tell the story of what happened to you, not to keep you in a victim mindset, mind you, but I feel for, I'm going to say for women in particular, because I deal more with women, but I do have some male counterparts and men that I've met along this journey as well that are also doing their work and healing and growing, and so it really gives me hope, because there for a long time I became very focused on the what men have done to me, eh, until I really could flip that mindset. So that's very important in having a good therapist that can help you do that. And I think she said to me at one point, Ginger, your story is your life has been, it's unbelievable. You can't make this shit up. It was one of the things that used to get said a lot, because there was just so much, and that's why I'm writing the book. But one day you're going to tell the story and you're not going to break down and crumble. You will tell it because it's your fight song and it's going to help others. That makes me want to cry a little because it's so true. Um, and so now that's sort of the passion of it is the connection with um, whether it just be my followers on Facebook or people that have actually bought and read my book and they send me a message saying thank you for posting some of the hard stuff and telling your story and being really raw and open about it because I don't beat around the bush with it. And some of it's not great, and taking accountability can be really hard, taking that real deep look at yourself and accept it. And I've made some mistakes too here and then trying to fix that, it's healing for me. Very cathartic, very cathartic.
So I'd like, if you're listening, I'd like, as a listener, I want you to catch a couple of things that Ginger just brought up that I think that are critical for leaders. And there's actually three things. One of the things she said was you have to take accountability, right? You can't live in this victim mentality for the rest of your life, regardless of what your story is. And I think that a lot of us have the tendency to tell our story like it's the worst story in the whole world, and nobody has a story that's harder or more heartbreaking or sadder or whatever, and that's not true. And the other thing she's touched on is that when you get your story out of you, it gives you the ability to start to heal. There's no shame in telling your story. I said this recently on a podcast, and I think it bears repeating. And Ginger's really saying the same thing, and that is that who's to say if you had this wonderful childhood and your cat Fluffy dies at the age of 11, that's no more traumatic or less traumatic than what Ginger lived through or what I lived through. And the other thing is, as a leader who wants to lead with love, it's really important to hear what Ginger's saying in that we all have a story. And so when we interact with people, we have to be aware that they got their story. You might not know their story, but one of the things as a leader is to delve into them as a person, to learn about their story. It's also one of the things I love about you, Ginger, and how you show up in the world is that your transparency to share your story, right? I really believe that our story, we each have our own story, is meant to help, heal, or serve somebody else. So I'd like to talk about when you coach your clients, what's something that one of the first things that you get them to work on to kind of come out of the trauma and leave the story kind of in a place where it's just the story and it's not how they identify themselves anymore.
Sure. That's a big one. That was hard for me, especially if you are someone who hasn't been heard in a while, you know, and when you start to find your voice, it's important to tell that. And it does take some repeating, I think. So and I know we're going to get to the book thing. I know you had a question about one of the books. What was a book I had read maybe that changed my life. So for me to change my mindset about telling the story, making that the focal point of it, that's where writing came in handy for me. That's how that allowed me to get it out on paper, read it back to myself many times, many drafts, many however journaling, like you said, whatever style it is that you want to call that, getting it out. Um, it definitely takes a back seat naturally, I think. So I usually ask my clients one of the very first things is what is your morning routine? And in that morning routine, like when I wake up in the morning, because I'm a overthinker and I'm a bit compulsive and obsessive, but I wake up with thoughts sometimes already going. And a friend of mine years ago had given me, and this isn't the answer to your question about the book, this is another book, but it's called The Artist Way. And one of the things that that teaches in it is for, especially if you're a creative soul, is to, in the morning when you get up, whether you're meditating or, you know, doing yoga or having your coffee and even watching a morning program, to jot down those thoughts immediately. Get that down on paper. To me, that began a journaling spot in my day that I made sure I made it. I added that as a habit very
So,
quickly.
so for our listeners, she just dropped a golden nugget. And I want to repeat back what she said. It's very important. You don't necessarily have to tell your story to somebody. You can write it down and get it out of you. That's one way to kind of exercise it out of you. The other thing that she just talked about is, regardless of the random thoughts that you have, get those out of you too. Because once we write them down and get them out of us, our mind can let it go. And then you start to get literally physically get lighter, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. You touched on something else. How do you coach people to find people that are safe to tell their story to, right? Because there's
Yeah,
some people, if we tell our
it's
story,
important.
they'll use it against us, or
Sure.
or they'll make fun of us or do those kinds of things. So what are your thoughts and your process when you work with people on how to find somebody safe to share your story with?
So that's a big one. I learned this lesson, and I am going to tell you this is probably the lesson that I had to learn several times over, with sort of preservation, you know, protecting my heart because I'm a giver, I'm an empath, I all the things. And I love big, and I am an oversharer by nature. And that comes from a lot of my childhood trauma. So one of the things I like to say is I always coach, if I'm coaching, I'm coaching you towards therapy. I mean, first and foremost, individual, I don't even care if you're married or not, whatever. That relationship is going to come next to the relationship you need to have with yourself, and that's going to start with a really good therapist. Go back and figure that out. Um I feel like that was I don't know, my mindset had to be changed. So I got this is going to take us back to your first question about that book. There is one book, and I push that on my clients. Very first thing that you need to do is figure out what your attachment style is before you
What's that?
go into a
So
relation.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ginger. Would you tell the audience, so they're not trying to figure it out? What's the title of the book you're talking
The
about?
title of that book, if we're going to go ahead and answer that question, just because it is such a huge part of my journey, and it is for my clients as well, I think, is called Attached. And that is attached. There are two authors, they co-authored together, The New Science of Adult Attachment. Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. And my therapist gave me, this was the first homework she gave me, the first book she had me read, and she said to me, you know, I don't have a copy right now because I lend it out so much, and I didn't get it back from my last person yet. Um, and I think she pushed me into the chapter somewhere around like 4 or 5, and that is what is your attachment style? She said, go to that immediately. I want you to read it. Then I want you to read the whole book. Then I want you to read that chapter again. And then I want you to come back. We're going to come back and talk. And so I want you to know that it was like opening a floodgate of information about myself. And it helped me understand why I was an anxiously attached, and I had all this anxiety in relationships, and why I had that anxiety, and why I felt the need to overshare, why I felt the need to give information to people who would use it against me later, and why I felt the need to try to win over people who were not available to me or were just using me or whatever and so forth. So literally, it was the gold mine of, this is how you're going to fix yourself. This is where you're going to start. But you have to, along with it, is what you talked about earlier, which is the accountability of why I end up in these relationships, why I choose these men. Are they attracted to me? What is the deal? What's going on? This took like I had to give up men dating, sex. I'm celibate. This is something that's happened, that has saved my life from that. So it's not just one thing you can do, but that is one thing you can do. Find out why you're codependent, or why you're seeking love from someone who doesn't love you, or so that's where we start, is that book.
So I love, for our listeners, there's a number of things that she's touched on again. And one of the things I want you to know, and this comes up very, very often on the podcast, and that is that leaders are readers. And so she shared a very powerful book with you that's changed her life. And she went into some depth about why and how it changed her life. So I'd highly recommend you pick up that book. As a leader, I think it's really important to know why and how you're giving yourself away. One of the things that she touched on earlier too, that I want you to delve into and spend some time with, is self-love. The only way you can lead in love is to love yourself. And so what are some of the things that you share with your coaching clients about how to love themselves?
This one is the hardest, and especially if you have been taught, like me, to be a people pleaser in life. I was very much raised to be a good girl, sit and be pretty, don't cause a fuss, demure, all those things. Um, but that's not self-love. There's a lot of self-abandonment in that lifestyle if you're gonna put others before yourself. So don't you got to get rid of people pleasing. Yeah, it's got to go. Even like for your children, it's that's just one of the things I had to retrain my brain how to not fall into that, because it's very easy. It's a pattern. It's a pattern I grew up, I created it to survive, out of being told that I would be loved more if I would do these things.
So
So
what are some of the things you share with your clients to get them to
so
self-love?
to get them to start loving themselves, I usually, especially if most of my coaching is normally women that are trying to break a trauma bond. And I'm trying to help them figure, some of them don't even know that's what they're in. So the self-love, even that one I still struggle with. So that's what I want to put out there first of all, because you can do 10 steps forward in this journey of yours, which is, by the way, very individual in your journey. And then you can do, 10 steps back and self-abandon, because a new person comes in your life, or you meet a guy and you want to impress him, and you want to, and a lot too of us are acting out of ego, which ego makes you a bad leader. It can not only can make you a bad person, but just, you know, it can make things become very toxic. So once you break that, then you kind of, it gives you the ability to go in and find your worth as a human being, not just as this false person that you put out there, as who you truly were born to be before you were taught all these bad things about yourself, or you created a way to survive and become this people pleaser. When you start breaking those habits, the self-love also kind of comes in naturally. This is something I want to say that is good about the narcissistic relationship I went through. Let's say the one after I got divorced, and then I had to have one more really crappy situation to go through before I got woke up. And I think that was the one, not so much the one with my husband. There was definitely a self awakening with that. But this one was different. And this person showed me, through sort of mirroring me, things in myself that I definitely needed to change. I didn't know that's what was happening at the time.
So she just hit the flipping nail in the head. She hit the ball out of the park. She just said something. I want you as a leader to hear what she just said. The only time somebody can trigger us is if it's still alive in us. And she was aware enough to take responsibility to realize that in this relationship she was in, this guy was only reflecting back what was still alive and well in her. If you're a leader and you're leading your family, you're leading your business, you're leading anybody, and we're all leaders, and somebody keeps tripping your trigger, it's alive and well in you. You need to work on you. The problem isn't outside of you, the problem's inside of you.
Big one. Yeah. And it's the hardest. It's the one I see most people really struggle with. And they're on the other flip side of that is still sort of
Well, and
accountability.
right, and don't you think the reason why they're struggling with it is because they're still playing the symptom?
Well,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, the victim
the
rather. They're
victim.
still
Yeah.
playing the victim, and they're blaming the symptom on somebody outside of themselves.
Because they're in avoidance, right? They're being an avoidant person as far and I avoided. That's I want to point on that too. Is it is very important because until you get beyond avoiding these problems or you're still numbing, I became quite. I speak very candidly on my drinking and drug use and things like that that I went through because the cure for these things, and I want to say a mild alcoholic, light. I like to call it alcoholism light. I didn't sell my kids or leave a kid in a car or anything like that. I was very much my kids were grown as it got worse, but I made a lot of mistakes with that. And the whole time that I still felt the need to numb and do whatever it was always just avoiding what I needed to be doing, which was self self-love, self-care, self development, personal development, but also going in, doing the work with the therapist and healing some childhood traumas. It's very, very important for self-love. We're kind of get back to the self-love thing. So
Well,
that's the only way I was able to do it.
and so one of the things she just touched on, very, very powerful, and that is that you have to do the work and you have to turn inside. One of the things I share with people all the time is nobody takes away your peace, you give it away. The other thing is I'd like you to, one of the things that I always like to do with these podcasts is challenge you to take action today when you hear this. One of the things she just touched on, very, very powerful. If you're self-medicating, and I want you to take a long, hard look at what you do and how you're living your life. If you're drinking, drugging, sex, work, exercise, people use exercise as a way to self-medicate, food. There are lots of ways people self-medicate. And what she said, very powerful, you're self-medicating because you're not brave enough yet to turn towards whatever you think is bothering you or the monkey on your back. And I can tell you that one of the things I learned is once I turned and looked at the monkey, I thought, well, why the heck was I so afraid for so long? Because, and she's smiling, for those of you that are listening, she's smiling or nodding her head, because once you turn and look at the monkey on your back, you think, well, that's all? What the hell was I so afraid of for all these years? Why was I running? Why was I self-medicating? So what I'd like you to share next, Ginger, is what's one of the things, or maybe I'll back that up. What's 2 or 3 habits that you like to share with your clients to get them on a positive mindset and a positive track of heading into the light instead of the darkness?
I just wrote down change habits because I knew that's probably where we were going to go. Um, yeah. So when we were talking about starting off and what's a couple of the things or the first few things I'll ask someone to do will be what are some of your morning what's your morning like, and if it's this way and it's sugar and 5 cups of coffee and I'm guilty, so I'm not judging. I'm just saying, uh you know a few things that happened for me as I had a really good coach for a while, and you've seen my podcast with Caroline. She was my coach for quite a while. She actually came and lived with me, These are the things that she helped me do that changed my life. Well, one was quit drinking alcohol right away. Like any alcohol at all, it's got to go. It's poison. And so she helped me change my mindset about it as she helped me face some traumas. So at the same, it was like a double whammy of we're going to heal this right now because you're too young to keep, and immediately I dropped 30 pounds. Like she cleaned out my pantry and my refrigerator. So that's where I start.
I want to interrupt real quick. So one of the things that she just said, I can tell you, game changing, game changing, game changing. I don't touch a drop of alcohol anymore either. It's poison. And I spent 20 years in the Marines drinking like a fish. It doesn't work. It doesn't solve anything. The other thing is I want you to understand what she's talking about with diet. And this is very important. If you want to lead with love, you need to lead yourself first. Everything you put into your brain and everything you put into your mouth, it's either positive and making you healthy or it's sick and making you sicker. So be very careful of what you listen to, what you read, the things that you put into your brain and the things that you put into your mouth. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're
Oh
again,
no, you're fine. That's fine. I mean, we're on a good roll. It that those were, I mean, gosh, powerful. And I can't remember. I think she called them little golden nuggets she gave me. Really another one is so small, but it's huge. First thing in the morning when you get up, instead of drinking that coffee, or I don't know, my mom used to pop a Coke, like those were the habits we grew up with, right? Um, is to have two big glasses of water because I kept telling her, "Oh, I'm so hungry when I get up in the morning. I feel like I got to eat something right away." And she said to me, and I kid you not, I'd nobody, and I'd worked for doctors for years, and not one doctor I ever heard this come out of his mouth. She said, "If you will just get up and drink these two big glasses of water in the morning, and you can put lemon in it, you can add, some apple cider vinegar or whatever." But just drink these two glasses of water before you do anything else. I promise you, it's going to change your whole life. And it did. I didn't realize I was dehydrated. I didn't know I was thirsty, that I was waking up thirsty, that was not hunger at all. That was thirst. And that was huge for me. So I always kind of start there. Same place she started with me because it worked. And I'm telling you now, I've tried over the course of 20 something years, I'm sure I've tried every diet. I've done Weight Watchers, I've done, I don't even know what some of there's injections, there's Phentermine, there was some pill we took back in the 80s or whatever to get skinny. All of that crap had to go. You have to change your mindset about, like you said, what you're putting in it every single day. And starting off with just that one act changed my metabolism. The alcohol went, I looked better, I got in better shape because I started exercising. So generally she saved my life. Not, she changed it, but she saved me also in a way because she was honest enough with me as well and said, "You drink too much." And she wasn't
yeah.
afraid to tell me that.
So, so yeah, so Ginger, again, I love where you're coming from and I love your heart. So two things for your listeners. One is that you want to understand the power of a morning routine. There are a number of books out there about how to start your morning, but she hit that nail on the head as well. It's really critical how you start your morning. Yeah, and one of the things that I know for a fact is there's three things your body needs in the morning. It needs water, it needs movement, and at some point after a while it needs protein. So but educate yourself and start, like we've talked about on other podcasts, what are little things you can do over time. If 2 glasses of water is too much, tomorrow morning start with 1 glass of water and work up to 2 glasses of water. I also think it's powerful what she's talking about is the fact that sometimes simple things that are truth and still clean and real, like a glass of water, can change the game. So don't ever underestimate that. Ginger, this is fascinating. I'd like to ask you, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Also too, one of the things that has helped me sort of find my purpose, like being able to do what I do now, writing, and I do speak. I'll do speaking engagements, podcasts, things like that. Um, during when I first came to the houseboat, that's what I want to say about why I'm here. Uh, I came here to be on the water. I had the opportunity came. I jumped on it. I grew up here on the lake, so very natural space for me to be. But healing and being around nature has been key for me. Also, not having or being in another or more toxic environments, knowing when I get in one now and getting out very quickly. But on my off time, when I wasn't writing books, I started a support group for women. It's on Facebook. It's called Lotus. And it has over 1,000 members now, and it's growing every day. And I just share a lot of things on that for people maybe that are just coming out of the a bad abusive relationship and domestic violence, something like that. And I'm trying to get more information out there and spread awareness of.
So how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, well, let's go to that. um so I have a couple of different things. Probably the easiest, if you wanted to get straight to me, would be my email, and that's just gingerlawler@gmail.com. Um, I have a YouTube channel. Also, if you Google Ginger Maxwell Lawler, it'll take you just about straight to any of these. And my Amazon page, which is amazon.com/author/glaw.
Gotcha. Thank you. And one of the things we do for all our listeners is we put all that information in the meeting notes. I just want to say thank you again for taking your time. I love your transparency and your heart and your devotion and dedication to help other people come from the darkness into the light. So God bless you and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Really do. Had a great time.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.